that. Let me bring in Gina Loudon. She's a Trump supporter and a radio and a TV host. Clay Aiken is here. He's a former Democratic congressional candidate from North Carolina. And Carrie Sheffield is with us. She's a contributor at Forbes magazine, founder of Bold.Global. And we should also mention not a fan of Mr. Trump's. So that said, Carrie, let me just begin with you. You know, we were talking a moment ago now that a lot of people have been calling for Donald Trump sort of specifics on foreign policy, which we should be hearing later tonight at AIPAC, but also naming names on who's advising him. And so he now has released these 5 names. The committee is apparently chaired by Senator Jeff Sessions. But then throw the Kasich tweet up on the screen, please, because John Kasich, governor of Ohio, has basically responded with this. This is what it looks like when you build your national security team out of actual experts, is his tweet. And I have page 1, page 2. These are all names from Governor Kasich. Here you can see on your screen. Four pages of names. What do you make of this?
Well, basically, when you can put your entire foreign policy on a postage stamp, that basically says a lot about who you are as a candidate. When you're a candidate who says that you look at the Sunday talk shows to guide your foreign policy, that's how he gets his news. This is a man who has never grappled with serious issues. This is a man who has only grappled with how to make himself rich, how to make his immediate family members rich. This is not a man who has devoted his life to public service, and that's why people like myself, we are part of #NeverTrump. We are conservatives who know that he is a phony, and we will never support him. We never will, because we don't trust him. He is a man who wants power for the sake of its own sake. So I will never trust him, and this is just another example.
Gina, I want you to respond to that.
Yeah, well, they say in politics, if you want to trust somebody, get a dog. So I completely agree with that. And I don't trust really anybody that's at that echelon of politics. But what I do understand about Mr. Trump, and I've actually not endorsed him, but my background is in psychology. And what is fascinating about him as a personality is how much he wants to succeed, how much he's in his element when it is about the art of the deal, and how much I believe him when he says that he wants to be the greatest American president ever. And this is a perfect example. This whole situation with AIPAC. He wants to do the whole deal with Israel, and like Nick Saban wouldn't say what his plays are going to be before the next football season, Donald Trump, I believe, is going to focus a lot more on the what he's going to do than the how he's going to do it, because he's a deductive thinker. He starts with a goal and he builds down. That's different from your traditional politicians, and I don't think Mr. Trump would deny that.
Gina, let me just stay with you because and listen, that may be the case, and he may outline all kinds of specifics this evening. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. My question, though, is this: on Capitol Hill today, when he's meeting with these rank and file Republicans, not a single member of Republican leadership gave him the time of day, and I'm just wondering why you think that is.
To most conservatives out there, this is a huge badge of honor for Mr. Trump, because most conservatives don't like the GOP establishment to begin with. This is the reason they're behind candidates like Ted Cruz and Mr. Trump. And here's the fascinating thing. Any other candidate goes to Washington, D.C., and they look like part of the establishment. Mr. Trump goes to Washington, D.C., he looks like the presumptive winner. He looks like he's closing the deal here, which is exactly his intention. He looks presidential.
Let me turn to both of you, and Clay, to you first. I mean, respond to that.
Well, listen,
Donald Trump.
when I ran for Congress, I ran as an outsider. And, a lot of people in this country do want outsiders. But it's one thing to go as an outsider with a plan, and it's a completely different thing to go as an outsider with no plan. And Donald Trump's foreign policy is essentially speak incoherently and carry a big stick.
Hang on a second. I mean, this is big news that he has a teleprompter.
Absolutely, and
I
think it'll be very telling as to whether or not he sticks with it, because it's not necessarily something that he's comfortable with. And I mean, really, I think that's what I'm most fascinated by. You look at who's going to be president, and I've sat here and thought to myself, wait, who can we see giving a State of the Union address? And Donald Trump has not been the person who has made anyone feel secure that he actually had a plan and had a vision. Tonight, the stuff that's going to be on his teleprompter, I think, will probably come from these 5 people, come from his speechwriters, whether he can stick to it and whether his supporters appreciate it, and whether they actually continue to appreciate him when he's not speaking in these generalizations and he's not speaking in these platitudes. It'll be very interesting to watch. It's going to be a very different Donald Trump.
I think the Donald Trump on Capitol Hill, why there wasn't members of the Republican establishment or leadership there, is because Donald Trump was probably giving high fives to Democrats. This is a man who has donated tens of thousands of dollars. Well, I'm just saying, in theory,
I know where you're going with
it was actually Democrats who Donald Trump has supported for decades. For decades. This is a man who flip-flops. This is a man who is inconsistent. It depends on what side of the bed he woke up on in the morning, depending on his policy.
That's not working with his supporters. That argument that the never Trump movement, listen, I'm never Trump too,
but
the
argument Republican candidate, Clay, who's getting the crossover vote.
The Republican, the group of voters who are voting for Donald Trump are not responding to the fact that he donated to Democrats. They're not responding to the fact that they're not responding to the fact that people that the Republican
these
establishment
are passionate people who are all in.
They appreciate him. What they like about him is that he is not bowing down to the Never Trump movement, and they like that. Now that should scare people, but it's,
and he's not bowing down to the establishment too.
Hold on, I want to hear from you, Gina. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think what his supporters like about him is, number one, that he is getting crossover voters, that he's attracting more Democrats than any Republican candidate has in a long time. He is building that big tent, and he's getting non-traditional voters as well, all sorts of minorities and others. And so, I don't know why people want to paint this picture that his support is somehow narrow. His support is broader than any of the other traditional Republican candidates. But let's not forget this, too. I agree with both of your other guests who've said that, it is his appeal that he is pushing back against the establishment. That's what people like about him. He wins every time he does that, and he's not going to stop that. And I think for those who are supporting him, that is the number one issue, pushing back against both the Republican and the Democrat establishment that a lot of people are sick of.
Quickly,
What's
Carrie,
clear is that he has been a divisive figure this entire time. The last debate, he said, let's be unified. He had an entire year to be a unifying figure, and he wasn't. That's why we see people who are upset. That's why people are boycotting and protesting and rioting at his rallies, is because he is an incredibly divisive and angry figure. And that's why people like myself will never support him, and that's why I would vote for a third party.
Keep it up. It's not going to work, and then he's going to be the nominee, and then the Democrats going to win.
Is he more divisive than Hillary? Is he
absolutely
more divisive than Hillary?
Yep.
We're going to say thank you. Carrie Sheffield, Clay Aiken, Gina Loudon, thank you all so much. Meantime, just reminding all of